Kamala Harris has a bit of a bumpy ride when it comes to her time as vice president behind Joe Biden here. And some are beginning to wonder, is this a strategy? Is this on purpose? Is it not her plan, but someone else's? Let's find out, because Latasha Brown, founder of Black Votes Matter, said this. I think there have been saboteurs within the administration. I think that they're worried about the age contrast, and they're worried about Kamala outshining Joe Biden. But she's just one person. No, she's not just one, because there's other folks that think so too. The new California Senator LaFonza Butler, newly put in. She said in an interview with the New York Times before being appointed as California's new US Senator, she said that detractors of Harris need to cut the BS. It's disrespectful, she says. And the thing that makes it more disrespectful is that we're talking about a historic vice president who has been a high quality partner and asset to the country at a time when everything is at stake. Right now is the time to respect what she's done and what she brings. Now, Kamala Harris's reputation is actually obviously taking a hit, and that's what I've noticed as well too. It's not like anyone can deny that there's not many approvals around it. She's ranked among her least favorable predecessors in recent history. Other vice presidents always ranked, not recently, have ranked higher. And as of October 3rd, 39% of registered voters had a favorable opinion of her, and 55 had an unfavorable opinion, as you can see from this graph here, a difference of 16 percentage points. Kind of sucks. But here's a reminder of some of the things that she's been dealing with as VP, which maybe gives some credence to the things that they're saying about sabotage or even just not really letting her shine. Let's see. By June of her first year in office, Politico had already declared that Harris's office was rife with dissent and quoted an anonymous source claiming it was an abusive environment. A slew of staff departures fed a stream of headlines that only seemed to confirm the waywardness that had defined her presidential campaign. The New York Post published a tally of Harris's staff departures, 13 within 13 months. I remember that report, David. And the thing is when that came out, I was like, well, there's lots of reasons for it. It could be dysfunction within her office. It could be folks that she hired on that maybe weren't the right folks to work with her. Maybe she's abusive. Maybe she's fiery. Maybe she's frustrated as things are going, because again, I'm willing to also agree to it as well. It hasn't looked that good for her. Who knows what behind the scenes have created this to happen? One more. In that first year, she had also had the opportunity to select several issues to fill out her policy portfolio, a chance for a vice president to own a signature policy lane. And according to several people familiar with those discussions, Harris had no interest in taking on criminal justice reform and policing, her area of career expertise. Maybe that was a mistake because, again, that's her area of expertise and maybe got her in the spotlight enough for people to have liked her in the primary enough for Joe Biden to feel like he should bring her in. Last one, I lied, David. Last one here. Harris also received an assignment she didn't want. According to White House officials familiar with these discussions, the president charged her with addressing the root causes of migration in Central America, coordinating public and private funds that could support people in their home countries before they tried to flee to the United States. Now, that's a noble thing to try and work towards. I've always said we have to look towards preventative measures or reasons why things happen versus the punitive nature of it, and putting her on something like trying to figure out why certain folks from one particular area of the world have decided to come this direction might help us mitigate that, or at least make it easier on those folks in their daily lives there. Whichever way that we have that kind of influence on. She turned that, apparently didn't, wasn't big on that either. So I have no conspiracy theory on people setting her up, David, or trying to tear her down since she's in this historic role as the first female and Black vice president. But I'm not sure if it's her own self-sabotage, but something is going wrong.
Well, I think some of the I think there is something to the charge that she has been unfairly smeared. And I, first of all, want to start with blaming much of the mainstream media, and in part because Kamala Harris did not have a great relationship with media reporters during her presidential campaign. It was just a fact. She wasn't charming to the media. Then you compound that, so she doesn't have deep relationships with the national media. Then she becomes vice president. And yes, there are a slew of departures. And then you suddenly have a lot of people calling up the media saying, it's a dysfunctional environment, she's abusive. And that starts to shape the way the media starts to cover her. And in part because Kamala Harris didn't have any longtime media friends or contacts who would vouch for her, suddenly the media narrative becomes, Kamala Harris, there's something sort of wrong with her. There's something dysfunctional about her office. And we haven't seen anything about her personally from her presidential campaign that would sway us to change that. So I think she got a bum rap from the beginning. She's probably compounded some things with not accepting certain assignments, a series of verbal gaffes. But by and large, the bottom line, she's still the vice president of the United States. She's still a historic choice. And by the way, if you had her speak for an hour compared to Joe Biden for an hour, yeah, she would come across as far more in tune and in touch and younger. And so part of this may be rivalries between the Biden camp and between Kamala Harris's supporters. At the moment, it doesn't really matter until that point at which Joe Biden says, I'm not running, or I'm going to run again, and suddenly I'm going to get a new vice president.
Or what many people are also hoping for as well, political enemies, that something, as far as something would cause him to step aside because of all of these, the age things that they're saying. He's on the verge of never leaving the basement, all that type of stuff. So if that ever actually is something that they're hoping for, wishing for would come true, that's part of their fear tactic is, do you know who would take his place? Kamala Harris, who we know is the worst thing ever. Because they know the way generally our society thinks about Black folks and Black women. It's a compound of disenfranchised and hated people. So she was kind of in a disadvantage in the first place. You mentioned some of her issues with the media, and really fast, just because this New York Times, they published this piece where a reporter, Asted Herndon, asked her a bunch of questions. She was a bit bristly with them as well. I want to go on to the back end of this because he asked her about Black issues and if she's assisted with those as well. And again, bristled at those types of assumptions about her. But there was I want to go down to graphic 11 because after she went through the back and forth with him, this interview ended when this is what they said from the New York Times. When someone asks, what does Vice President Kamala Harris bring to the ticket? What is that clear answer? Is what that reporter asked. Her team made it clear this would be my final question. Were you in this room of 2,000 people, she asked? I nodded. Did you see them cheering and standing? Yes. That's what I say. She stood up and walked out of the room. So not one to answer questions directly, just about what it is she brings to the table, specifically as far as maybe policy or what she does to support the president or what she's brought as far as energy. Maybe that's what she's insinuating. But then again, there's energy, and for sure people are looking to support her. I'm not sure if she's being held down, put on things that don't let her shine. I don't know, but I've noticed that she's not shining. And maybe it's by her fault or maybe by someone else's. But her political career looks like it's getting limited.
One of the worst kept secrets in Washington is that if you want to have a good relationship, if you're the president or vice president, you want a good relationship with Congress of both parties, you got to go on a term offensive. If you want a good relationship with the press, you have to go on a term offensive and take the stupid questions and the silly questions and smile and not be abrasive and not be adversarial. I think Kamala Harris genuinely doesn't like some of the media reporters, and maybe with good reason. But if you're really thinking about, okay, your future, there are some things you have to do as a national political figure, like a vice president or somebody running for office. There's some things that you just have to swallow it and say, okay, I don't like charming the media. I don't like hanging out with reporters on a bus, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to have a good time, and I'm going to make them feel good because that's a means to an end. I don't think Kamala Harris ever quite got there. And so as a result, she has this history of sort of being bristly, a little bit prickly with the media, maybe because they deserve it, because they ask stupid questions. But that ends up coming back to hurt Kamala Harris, because when the media decides, okay, are we going to do a story about Kamala Harris? Is it going to be, 60% good, 40% bad? If she has a, good relationship with the press, maybe it becomes 70 or 80% good and 20 or 30% bad. She doesn't get much help by the margins because she hasn't sort of gone that extra mile. Should she? I wish that wasn't the case, but that's the reality of how Washington works.
Yeah, she seems almost nervous every time she talks in front of cameras. That's where like the nervous laughter that people make fun of comes from, I think. This is, again, all assumptions on Kamala Harris. But at the same time, because of maybe what she's seen, the descriptions of her, she's always thinking, what is this going to look like? How am I going to come off? What are they going to say about this now? And you end up not being authentic at all. Maybe that's what's affecting her. Who knows?
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.